Here is the Desire3. This is the first in the line of our combination machines, so that means that it is an overlocker and a cover stitch in one. It's small, it's cute, it's compact, it's easily stored away. It's a fab little machine and is still one of our best sellers. So let's start with the overlocker. I'm going to take you through what the dials mean and where you would use them and how you would use them. And then we're going to go through a couple of the stitches just so that you can see how easy it is to change from stitch to stitch and how fuss-free it is. So here we've got two sets of dials. You've got a bigger one. This is your stitch length dial. It says standard and rolled hem. Quite simply, if you are using it on a standard stitch, something like your 4-thread or 3-thread overlock, then you use it on the standard setting. If you want a rolled hem, you turn the dial round quite easily. You can see that it's outlined the rolled hem setting there. And what that does is it will take your stitch finger out of play so that there is nothing there for your fabric to balance on. Here is your stitch width dial. Now, there are two sets of numbers, so if I just adjust that slightly, there is a larger set. This is the distance from the left needle to the blade, and then the smaller set is the right needle to the blade. So depending on what stitch you're working with, you know what set of numbers you're working with, and you can easily adjust your width. Now you can see here it has an M. This is your standard width setting for a rolled hem. This little dial here, if you turn it round, it says lock. This is your knife lock. So if I unlock that, bring the knife up, you can see that it's moving up and down. If we don't want our knife in play, we want to disengage it, turn it round, it will say lock. It's gone down, it's out of the way. Now with this being cover stitch as well, the knife has to go completely down so it is out of the way. Pop that back up. On the front here, you can see we've got a lever here. This is your differential feed. Now this lever here controls your feed dog. So if I remove that foot, you have two sets of feed dogs on your baby lock. The back set will always remain the same. This controls the front set of feed dogs. It actually works on an elliptical movement, getting bigger, but the easiest way to think about it is in speed. The more we put it up, the faster this front feed dog will go. This means that your fabric will then gather up. Absolutely fantastic for gathering, ease stitching if you're putting a sleeve in, or just controlling your fabric. If we put it all the way down, you can see this little diagram here, the arrows are pointing outwards. That means that it will stretch your fabric out. So another way to control your fabric. So this front feed dog here will then move slower than the back one. Now I'm just going to pull the door down. You can see here we've got a dial with A, B, C and D on, but we don't have any tension dials on the front. So with this being an automatic tension, we don't have the dials, but what we do have is this lever here on the side. This is your stitch selector dial. This is you telling the machine what stitch you would like to do. To put it easily, A is a 4-thread overlock or any wide seam using your left needle. B, 3-thread overlock, right needle. C and D, rolled hems. C for thicker fabrics, D for fine fabrics. When I say it's for thicker fabrics, what it is that there isn't as much tension on that lower looper, so it's not curling the edge of the fabric round as much as what D would. I don't use this so much, but it is a nice setting that looks lovely on soft furnishings and maybe something like a boiled wool coat. D I do use a lot. It's a lovely, fantastic tight rolled hem, which we will go on to. Let's go through setup. To get the air threading loopers in play, what we need to do is depress this button, turn the wheel towards us and these tubes lock into place. So I'll show you that again. To open them, you slide it to the right, press that button, turn the wheel, these tubes are going to lock into place. You'll hear the click. That's it. It's now ready for air threading. Here you can see you've got a little slider. This dictates whether you're doing your chain looper for cover stitch, lower looper or upper looper. You can thread it in absolutely any order that you like. I just work right to left, so I'm going to start with my lower looper. So I will take my thread, and it comes up and sits in the antennae at the top there. Now I'm just going to remove this. This is your pre-tension thread guide. This slides to the left and just lifts off. There are 2 springs in there to stop any knots forming. So if you're used to, with an older overlocker, tying your threads together and pulling them through, there is absolutely no need, and this will actually stop you from doing that. This is quite an easily replaceable part, so if it was to get damaged, it just slides off and you can order another one from your Baby Lock dealer. So just pop it back on, so it just goes back in the slots at the back there, and then slide to the right and it will click into place. Okay, so first off, we put our thread into the pre-tension thread guide. You'll hear that click again where it holds it in place, and then you put your thread into the thread channel, always threading with the presser foot up. We're then going to put 1/2 inch to 1 inch in the threading pot, and then press down on that lever, and as you can see, that is your lower looper threaded. Your lower looper is your notoriously difficult one to thread, and you can see just how easy that was with the push of a lever. So now we are going to move on to the upper looper. So I will now move this across to the U and then repeat the same process. It sits up in the antennae, it clips into the pre-tension thread guide, and then sits in the thread channel. Again, 1/2 inch to 1 inch in the threading port, and then press down, and that's it. That is your loopers threaded. You can now open your tubes back up and thread your needles. Now, unfortunately, this machine doesn't have a needle threader. It will come with, and on the side here, there is a little toolkit that sits in there. It will come with a little plastic needle threader. So if you aren't very good with your tweezers, you can use one of these instead. But let's go through the needles. So we're going to start with our right needle. Again, up into the antennae, clips into the pre-tension thread guide, sits in the channel, then it comes across, up, over and down. There is a little bar here that you can see. Your threads will sit behind there, but I do find it easier to thread my needle and then tuck them behind there. So you have your needle threader, so triangle to the top, lay your thread in it with a bit of tension, and then all you're going to do is you are going to run it down your needle, feeling for the eye, and then it pokes through. Do that again. Okay, it's through there. Now there is a little hook on the end there for you to be able to pull your needle thread through. And then I'll just move that around and then tuck it behind. So that is the needle threader that comes with your machine. Let's move on to the left needle. Again, clips into the pre-tension thread guide, follows the same path as the right needle, and then up, over and down. And then I'm going to use my tweezers this time because I am a lot quicker with the tweezers. There we go. And then again, that thread is then going to be tucked behind that bar there. These threads can be left. So this one, you can leave it hanging, and these you can leave them, all 3 of them, just hanging over the foot to the left. All I do is just trim them off to about 4 or 5 inches and leave them there. The machine will sort them out. So all now we need to do is just set our dials ready for a 4-thread overlock. So my stitch selector dial is already on A. My width Width and length are personal preference, but my go-tos are anywhere about 7, maybe sometimes actually, let's go to maximum 7.5 I like to work with. And my standard stitch length, my go-to is 3. Again, these are things that you will play around with and decide yourself which one you prefer. It might be that your pattern has a 1/4 inch seam allowance, that then you would put it to 6 millimeters, and that gives you your 1/4 inch seam. It might be that your sewing pattern has a 1 centimeter seam allowance, which is where I would use the 7.5, because what I do is I then line the edge of my fabric up with the edge of the plate here, and that will just trim off maybe a couple of millimeters of the fabric edge, and then it will give me pretty much my seam allowance that was given in the pattern. So before we start, I have to open those tubes up again. If I didn't open those tubes up, the machine would tell you off. It would growl at you. So be warned, if it starts going, it's because you haven't opened your tubes ready for sewing. So I'm going to put that back up, put that there. So we are now ready for a 4-thread overlock. I am going to put a few different samples of fabric through just so that you can see that I no need to tweak anything and that the automatic tension is doing the work for me. So let's start with some denim. Now, it's not that thick, so I'm going to then fold it over 2 layers, and then I'm going to fold it over into 4 layers, just so you can see that we are working with a bit more thickness. Now, all I do is, if I am working with more thickness, is that I make sure that my knife is at the highest point, and I will put my fabric so it's starting underneath there. But be careful, because it might look like your presser foot is down, but it isn't. So make sure that you put your presser foot down, otherwise you're going to end up with horrible looking stitches and wonder what's gone wrong. So. There is a thread cutter on the side, but I do prefer to bring my thread in front of the knife. So you can see there, perfect stitch, nicely balanced, sitting on the edge of the fabric. Absolutely fantastic. So that's 4 layers of denim. Now let's take it down to a bit of calico. So we'll just do the 1 layer, not adjusting anything again. Perfect stitch again. So let's get some stretch fabric going through, because that's what the overlocker was originally designed for. So you can see I've got a bit of lycra there, a bit of 4-way stretch. Let's run that through the machine. Let's do it. Again, perfect stitch, fantastic stretch in there, doing exactly what we want it to do. Now, I don't know if you've noticed, but I'm not actually lifting the presser foot up and down every time I'm changing fabric. I am just lifting the toe of the foot. Much easier to do it this way. Okay, so organza, if you can see, it's got quite an open weave. It's notoriously a horrible fabric to work with, and this is a good test of how the automatic tension works. So again, I'm not changing anything. We're just going to whiz this through. Perfect. On a fabric like that with such an open weave, most machines would shred it to pieces, but that has just given us a wonderful stitch and just worked. So while we are on a 4-thread overlock, I'm going to show you how efficient those feed dogs are and how well they work. So we're going to put our stitch length to maximum, so that's 4 on the standard, and we're going to put our differential feed all the way up to 2. I've got a nice strip here for gathering, so we're just going to pop that underneath, and then without pulling on the fabric too much, just let it feed through. And you can see there what a fantastic gather it gives you. It's nice and even. Never again will I gather using my sewing machine. It is so much easier to do using your overlocker. And yes, you can see all those tiered dresses that have been the fashion, and ruffles are made so much easier doing this on your overlocker. So now we're going to take the left needle out and we're going to go down to a 3-thread stitch. So we're just going to do a 3-thread narrow but balanced seam. So first of all, I'm going to lift my presser foot up and turn my wheel backwards and just free the stitch fingers from my thread. That's all. Now when I remove a needle, I always leave it threaded just because I am a bit of a klutz and I will drop the needle into the machine. Now Baby Lock have thought about this so that if the needle drops, there is a little tray down here that it will collect in. So that just pulls out, the needle will drop in there and just push it back in there. But I won't take that risk. See what I mean? I drop the needle. So because it's threaded, it's kept it there, and it just means that I can grab the needle and then pull it to the side. And with it threaded, all I need to do now is just snip that thread, and then I stab my needle up into my cone out of the way. Because the threads are free and the presser foot is up, I can remove this thread from the back there. I wouldn't if my thread was still attached in there. Okay, so now we've removed our left needle. What we're going to do is change our settings. So I'm going to put my differential feed back down to N, and I'm going to move my stitch selector dial onto the B setting. I'm going to show you the narrowest setting that you can have on a balanced stitch. So I'm going to take my stitch width dial round all the way and have it set on number 3. So you can see again, 2 sets of numbers. Because we're working with just the right needle, it is this bottom set of numbers here, so it will be 3 millimeters. I'm also going to take my stitch length down and I'm going to put it on about 1.5. I really like this stitch. Let's get that bit of calico again. If I want to finish some lining off and I don't want to put a proper hem on it, and I just want the edge of my fabric to be finished nicely so it stops fraying. So press the foot down, again lift that toe, put the fabric underneath, and then go. I think this stitch is beautiful. You can see here, it doesn't affect the drape because it's not pulled tightly like a rolled hem. It's beautiful, it's narrow, it's simple. Put a decorative thread in your upper looper and that will look absolutely fantastic. Shorter stitch length, you can see it sort of looks a bit like a satin stitch, so absolutely beautiful. And I do cheat with my French seams now, and I use my 3-thread overlock in my French seams because what I find is that it keeps my layers together, keeps them nice and tight inside without any pokey bits, and then I can just fold it back on itself and then stitch down there, and it just works absolutely beautifully. So you can see, really like this stitch. I think it's quite versatile, and if I wanted to as well, I could use it with just the left needle in and have it as a wide decorative stitch on the edge of something. So really nice. Okay, so we're going to take it down to the C setting. Now this is the rolled hem for thicker fabrics. What it is that it will not put as much tension on the lower looper as what the D setting will. So it's a little bit wider and not as tightly rolled, but it is a really nice stitch for soft furnishings, and also something maybe like a boiled wool jacket where you are just finishing the edge off, but not wanting to put anything too fancy on the edge. So we put it to C. I'm going to put my stitch width to M. That is the standard width setting for a rolled hem. And then I'm going to turn my stitch length dial onto the rolled hem setting. You can see there where it's outlined, and I will put it at 2. It's absolutely beautiful. You can see that it's trying to roll the edge of the fabric, but because it's not pulling it so tight, it's not as narrow as what the normal rolled hem is that you would see. But it's beautiful. It just gives a lovely finish. Let's show you on the back there where it's trying to roll it. And it would be a lovely finish just on, like I say, a boiled wool coat. I just think it's beautiful. From there, let's take it down to the rolled hem, as we all know. So let's take it to D. Don't have to change any of the other settings. All I have to do is put the stitch selector on D, and let's show you the tighter rolled hem. So I've still got it on a stitch length of 2. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to take it down slightly to about, so that was at 1.5, and then I'm now going to take it down to the minimum. And you can see what a beautiful rolled hem you get with your baby lock. So this is on a tighter, shorter stitch length, so all your threads are closer together. This is 1.5, which I would say this is probably one of my favourites. A little bit of gap there, but still nice coverage. And then we've got a slightly longer stitch length of 2. If you were to lengthen it a bit more, it would look beautiful. It would probably look a bit more like a picot wedge. You'd have your fabric popping out the edges there, but absolutely stunning. Also, if you were to use a thicker thread in your upper looper, you wouldn't need a shorter stitch length as that, because the coverage, say like from a woolly nylon, would be better because as it goes through the machine, it stretches out and then springs back. So the coverage is much better, which means then you could just have it on a longer stitch length. But you can see it's absolutely beautiful. If I turn around at the back, you can see how it's rolled the hem in beautifully. Perfect for lightweight fabrics and lettuce edge on jersey fabrics. So those are a few of the stitches that you can do using your overlocker. All I wanted to show you was how easy it is to go from a 4-thread to a 3-thread to a rolled hem. You can see that the automatic tension works absolutely fantastically, and that the setup was very, very simple as well. We are now going to change the machine over and change it to a cover stitch machine. Okay, so let's change this over to a cover stitch machine. The first thing that we're going to do is snip our threads and get rid of those. So not to be wasteful, I always chop my threads as close to the looper port and the needle as I possibly can. And then I'm just going to get my thread and pull them out. Let's take these threads out. And again, I can pull the threads from the back because I have snipped the threads and freed them up, and I've got my press foot up, so there is no tension on it. If it was to still be threaded and the press foot was down, all I would meet is restriction there, and I could risk doing harm to the machine. So always remember to snip your threads and lift your presser foot up, and that will just release the threads for you to be able to pull them from the back. So What we need to do first, there are 4 simple steps to change from an overlocker to a cover stitch machine. What I'm going to do is I'm going to change my needle position. So at the moment we've just got the 1 needle in there, but I'm going to release that. And I'm actually going to take my presser foot off because I do find it a lot easier to to put my needles back in without the presser foot on there. It just gives me a bit more space and allows me to drop my needle into the spot where it goes, and then I can bring it back up. So I am going to set the machine up for a wide cover stitch. This is probably one of the most popular stitches used for hemming. So we'll start with that one. So I put the C3 needle in, so that's the furthest right, and I'm going to put the C1 needle in, that's the furthest left. And there we go. Here you can see, and it's on the overlocker as well, there's a little window at the top. If your needle isn't all the way up and you can't see the tip of your needle there, you are going to end up with skip stitches or needles breaking. Your needles need to be inserted as far as they will possibly go. So we changed over, we have now got our needles in the cover stitch position. We don't use our knife when we're cover stitching, so we need to lock that. So we turn that dial round, on lock. You can see that the knife has gone down completely. And the other thing that we don't want moving up and down is our upper looper. So we use this dial here, this lever, and we just put it from up to down, turn the wheel towards us, and you can see that upper looper now is locked into position and is no longer moving up and down. The final step for it to become a cover stitch machine is we will remove our knife guard, which we just press there, that pulls off, and then we replace it with our cover stitch table. So our cover stitch table is this will slot in there. You want this bit here sticking up towards you. So I'm just going to leave that off for now while we thread up our chain looper. So as we did before, we press the button in, turn the wheel towards us, the tubes lock into place. I'll show you that again. Press the button, turn the wheel, tube locks into place. This bottom one here is your chain looper. Okay, we then move our dial over to the C because we are doing the chain looper. And then on the side here, this is where we thread it up. I am going to turn the machine slightly so you can get a better view what I'm doing. So this is where your chain looper will sit. So your thread will come up into the antennae again. And then I'm going to get my tweezers. Your thread goes from the outside in. So pull it through. Let that thread just drop down there. So as it drops down, you can see it naturally sits behind what we call the elbow here. So we want the thread to go round this elbow and then it's over the shoulder. So this over into this tension disc here. So then it comes up and over and then it sits behind that bar there. And then we would do again, 1/2 inch to 1 inch in the threading port and press the lever. But while we're here, you can see that it says chain stitch there and cover stitch. There is an embossed bit here that you line up your lines with. While the cover stitch side of the machine doesn't have automatic tension, I find that having it on either cover stitch here or all the way around onto chain stitch, if I'm doing a chain stitch, works absolutely fantastically. Very little tweaking. Maybe if I was working with a very difficult fabric, I would tweak it slightly again. But I find that these standard settings work perfectly on most fabrics. So no, it's not automatic tension, but it works almost like it has automatic tension on the cover stitch side. So I am just going to move that back round because we are doing a cover stitch. We are doing a wide cover stitch. And then turn that there, you can see. So you've got your line there that lines up here. So we popped our thread into the threading port. I'll open the door up because it will collect in a little tray here. So if I press down on the lever, your thread is then there. Now it's entirely up to you. You can leave the thread in the tray, or as I do, just pull it out a little bit and leave about 4 or 5 inches and close the door. It doesn't matter. The machine again will pick it up and sort it out for you. We can now open our tube back up because otherwise we'll get that growling noise. and then we can thread our chain needles, sorry. So we are going to do number 1 and number 3. So they will sit up in the antennae. There is a little bar at the back here with 3 holes in it. Your thread then comes from the bottom and through to the top. So we'll do number 3 first. So if I pull that up, it then sits in its channel there. And then, much like we did here, just in reverse, it comes down, it goes up, over and down. And then there are some little guide bars for your thread to sit behind at the front here, if you don't pull them out. And then thread your needles. So I'm going to snip that fluffy end off and then thread my needle. I can now move that thread and sit it there. So your C1 thread will sit here, your C2 thread will sit there, and your C3 thread will sit there. And then they all tuck behind that big bar there. So we'll do the same for our C1 thread. So it goes from the underneath and through to the top, sits in its thread channel there. Again, follows the same path, comes across, up, over and down. And then I am going to thread the needle first. And then I'm going to put my thread in position. So I can just hold on to it and then use my tweezers to bring it round and tuck it there. And there we go. That's it now, threaded for a cover stitch. If I turn that round again, you have a dial here. This is your chain needle tension. Now I have to say, it very rarely, if it ever does, move from 5. And if it does, then it probably goes to 4 or maybe up to 6. I have not found the need yet to use it on any of the other settings. As I said, the cover stitch doesn't have automatic tension, but the standard settings work pretty much on most fabrics as if it does. So we'll twizzle that back around. Okay, so we'll pop our presser foot back on. And it just slides in there. I'm going to put lever down at the back. If you find that when you put your presser foot down at the back, it hasn't actually grabbed your foot, there is a lever here. This releases the foot. So if I press that again, releases the foot, but it will also, if you put the presser foot down, grab it again. Okay, so now it's entirely up to you with your threads. You can leave them hanging over the foot or you can tuck them underneath. Generally, I leave them over the foot because I will do a test piece, but if this was my actual garment that I was finishing off, I would turn my wheel, bring my needles back up, and then just pull my needle threads from underneath the foot and have them start, all of them starting underneath the foot. So the only thing to do now is to put our cover stitch table back on. So that then slides on there, fits in like that. We can put our door back up. Differential feed, you can still use this to control your fabric using the cover stitch, or you can use it to gather. It's entirely up to you. Again, it's going to stay on N for now. The only dial down here you are going to use is your stitch length dial, and you will be using it on the standard settings. So my go-to, again, 3mm stitch length, and that's where it's going to be. So we'll show you it on a bit of calico first, just so that you can see that you can use it on both woven and stretch fabrics. Always starting with your fabric underneath the needles. Baby lock machines will chain off. They are only meant to chain off at a stitch length of maximum 4mm, but I do find sometimes that they will chain off at a shorter stitch length. But if you are wanting to make a chain and use these chains, then make sure that you have it set at the maximum stitch length. So you can see there, we've got a lovely perfect hem. It's like I say, this is the most common one that you would find on your t-shirts and stretch fabrics. And then you've got your chain loop aside, which gives it that professional finish. I'm going to put this on some stretch fabric now because this is obviously a stretchy stitch, but this fabric doesn't. So let's get some jersey. So we've got a nice bit of black there, so my stitch will stand out. There are a variety of different accessories that you can get to help enhance your cover stitching and your overlocking with these machines. But for now, I'm just going to do it by eye and just for demonstration purposes. So you can see that I just lifted the toe of the foot. What I've done is I pushed my fabric all the way up to the needles because I know on the next turn, it's actually going to go into the fabric. So there we go. Again, got our lovely stretchy stitch there, loop aside. If I go like that, you can see it's giving you that lovely stretch in fabric. So perfect for your jerseys. I'm going to do the same again. I'm going to remove a needle and we're going to take it down to the chain stitch. So press the foot up. I'll take the left needle out, stab that up there and remove the left needle thread. I'm going to turn my chain loop attention dial around and I'm going to set it on the chain stitch setting. So again, fabric underneath the needle and go. You can see there we've got our one row of stitching and then our chain loop aside. This has more stretch than what your sewing machine lock stitch would have, but it doesn't have as much stretch as what the wider cover stitch stitches have. This is because of how the loops are formed. That's what gives it that give that allows you to stretch the fabric. So if we do that on the jersey fabric, show you again. So there's our chain stitch. It's got some stretch to it. And more than what your sewing machine lock stitch would, but obviously not as much stretch as what a cover stitch has. So now that we've used this as an overlocker and a cover stitch machine separately, we are now going to use them combined. So to do that, we need to take it back to an overlocker. So I'm going to change a few settings, but what I am going to do is I'm going to leave my chain looper and chain needle threaded and in play. So first things first, I'm going to remove my cover stitch table, take that off and replace it with my overlocking knife guard again. We want the blade and the upper looper back in place, so I'm going to switch that round and turn that back to up. Now if I move the wheel, you'll be able to see both of them are now moving freely again. I'm going to then add an extra needle into the overlocker side. So I am going to put the left needle in because I want a wide cover stitch. So I'm going to take that foot off because I find it easier to thread with the foot off. And then you get one of these useless little brushes with your machine for cleaning. Now, to be fair, I prefer to use a woolly dauber. You can get these quite easily on Amazon. Just type in woolly dauber or leather cleaner, and these really do help to pick up all the bits quite nicely. But what you will find that this little brush is useful for is holding your needle. So there's a hole at the end there. I'm just going to insert my needle into there. So I can then drop my needle down and then push it all the way back up. Get my Allen key, tighten that up, and then remove that. So it makes it so much easier to insert a needle. Now all we need to do is we need to thread it back up for our overlocker. With this being a 5-thread machine, you are limited to using a 3-thread overlock. So we will have a run of chain stitch and then an overlocked edge. This is what is commonly known in industry as the safety seam. So let's rethread it for an overlock now. So press the button in, turn the wheel, lock the tubes. I'm going to slide that back over to the L, and I'm going to work right to left again and do my lower looper first. So it clips into the pre-tension thread guide, sits in the channel, sits behind there, 1/2 inch to 1 inch in the threading port, and then press down, and that's it threaded. Again, you can leave that thread hanging there, the machine will sort it, and just trim it to about 4 or 5 inches or the bottom of the machine. So now let's move on to the upper looper. So move your slider across to the U, and then thread into the antennae, clips into the pre-tension thread guide, sits in the thread channel, and again, 1/2 inch to 1 inch in the threading port, press down, and there you go. That's that threaded. We can open our tubes back up again by sliding that little metal bar to the right, and we can now thread our needle. So I'm doing the left needle. I'm doing a wide overlock. So it clips in, comes across, up, over and down, and then get my trusty tweezers and thread that needle. And then all I need to do is just tuck that behind the bar there. We are now all threaded up for a 5-thread safety seam. Because I'm using the left needle, I want it on A on my stitch selector. I'm going to have it on maximum stitch width, and my stitch length is on the standard setting and stitch length of 3. Differential feed is sitting at N. What I am going to do is, because I have the C3 needle in, my stitch width will actually be 9 millimeters. If I was to have the C2 needle in, that would take it up to 13 millimeters, and then to C1, 16 millimeters. This is very handy when you are working with patterns that might have a seam allowance of 1.5 centimeters or 5/8 of an inch. This then allows you to use either C1 or C2, and that will put your chain stitch on the line of where your seam should sit. So I'm just going to tidy up these threads and then put the presser foot back on. So I'm just going to slide that in from the left, lower the presser foot, and then it has caught it. There we go. Just make sure all of my threads are sitting underneath my foot. I'm going to start with them underneath the foot this time. Doesn't matter, the machine will still sort it out, but I just find having 5 threads, it's nice to have them tucked out of the way. So a bit of calico again, using the edge of my plate as my guide, put my presser foot down. And you can see there we have a line of stitching, our chain stitch, and an overlocked edge, and a nice safety seam there. So that's it for the Desire 3. We've been through setup, overlocking, different stitches for overlocker, changing it from an overlocker to a cover stitch, changing it back to an overlocker and using both modes together. Hopefully this tutorial has piqued your interest in the machine or answered some questions for those of you that already have the machine. If not, please drop a comment below and we will get back to you. But for now, thank you very much for watching, and look out for more videos from Baby Lock UK in the future.